Hi, my name is Mona Jamshed, and I'm going to introduce you to a series of lectures on a software engineering course called Requirements Engineering. I delivered this course to a group of students of Bachelors of Software Engineering at University of Adelaide in the year 2022. This course covers the foundation of requirements specification of a software product. I taught the course in different sections, and it started from understanding requirements specification, understanding the client's needs, analyzing those needs, testing and validation of those needs, prototyping, and management. The slides that I have used have originally been prepared by Professor Dagmar Monnet, who is a professor of computer sciences at the Berlin School of Economics and Law. She has very kindly provided these slides for teaching purposes and has also allowed the modification. So a slight modification has been done to suit the needs of the students. I've tried to teach this course in a very basic manner using everyday examples. I hope you enjoy this series and you're able to learn something about requirements engineering. Also, you will be seeing this clip at the beginning of each of the lectures that I'll be uploading under this lecture series. Happy studying. All right, let's begin now. All right, so today's topic is prototyping for requirements elicitation and understanding. Now, I'll just start straight away with a cartoon. Okay. Now it says there's an acronym here, IKIWISI. I'll know it when I see it. So let's just first go through this. Now this is the business analyst, and she's there talking to her client, and she's saying that I will need to know your requirements before I start to design the software. So first of all, what are you trying to accomplish? And the client is like, I'm trying to make you design my software. I mean, what are you trying to accomplish with the software? I won't know what I can accomplish until you tell me what the software can do. So this is the client replying. Try to get this concept through your thick skull. Now here she's really getting upset. The software can do whatever I design it to do. And of course, then there's a complete silence. And then the client comes up with, can you design it to tell you my requirements? So this basically illustrates that it's really difficult for the users to describe what they need, right? And it's, I think even in our general life, I'm not just talking about software engineering, in general as well, people have a hard time describing their needs without having something tangible in front of them, right? That's something tangible that they can see, they can visualize, and then they are able to articulate better. So that's why this acronym is like, I can't describe what I need, but I'll know when I see it, right? So you can very well see that what is this business analyst going through at the moment. She must be horrified because, she knows that if there is not enough clear elicitation, then probably her developers team is going to make their best guess at the right software to build. And most probably they will be told by the users that, nope, that's not right. We didn't ask for this, please try again. So that's why in situations like these, and this is a very practical situation that you will find even in your jobs as well, or as you go out in your careers, users always have a hard time coming up with their requirements in a very lucid, clear way. And that's where the prototype comes in picture, right? Why prototypes are good? Because they try to make the requirements look more real, okay? So even as you go through, no matter, like we have discussed in this course, so many steps, starting from elicitation to analysis, specification, validation, and at each step, we have tried to focus on one thing. How can we come up with good quality requirements? something that is going to minimize any rework to be done after implementation, and something that is going to reduce our costs. And so that's why even you'll see that even as we go through all the steps of requirements development, like making as specific requirements as possible, trying to come up with good quality requirements. And even like I've talked to you about how we can touch both on functional and non-functional requirements. There will be portion of requirements that will be still unclear or uncertain to both the developers and the customers. And you know it, that if there is some uncertainty, there is some unclarity, it is just going to increase the gap between what the customer needs and what the developer is going to build. I hope you can recall this image that we did way back in our elicitation session, where we are talking about how a continuous customer engagement is really important in reducing the gap between the customer's requirements and what the developer builds. So yeah, that's why we are now going to discuss in today's session all about prototyping, which is going to help reduce this gap. Our topics for today is what we'll be covering today: prototyping, what and why. And then we'll be talking a lot about various types of prototyping. We have something called mockups, proofs of concept. Then we talk about throwaway, evolutionary prototypes, paper and electronic prototypes. How do we work with prototypes? How do we evaluate them? Just like we talked about how we can make sure that we are coming up with good elicitation techniques, good analysis techniques. We also talk about, like, if I have a prototype, then how can I ask my user that what was good in it and what I can improve? And then what are some of the risks involved in prototyping, and what are the success factors of prototyping? This is the acknowledgement. Now, before I begin with this slide, I wanted to I wanted to start with a video just to set the the tone, the mood for what prototyping is, and just to help you show you a glimpse of like all the big companies like Apple, Google, how they utilize prototyping in their business. So let me, now how do I minimize this? You just bear with me. Okay. I'm going to share this screen. No. I'm going to play this for a few, for like 5 to 7 minutes, just to help you, launch your understanding of prototyping. So let me full screen.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Prototyping. I'm Jeff Bernstein. I brought along Linda Dong, Julian Missig, and Mark Hauenstein from the team. So who is this session for today? Well, it's for developers at companies. Show of hands. Excellent, to be expected. Solo developers. All right. People who don't code at all. Anyone? All right, great. Very brave of you. And designers. Designers? Yeah, all right. and management types. Sort out, you guys, yeah. So our plan today, we're going to design and prototype an app. We're going to go through the steps we would go through to try something out. And we're going to show you a variety of different prototyping methods. All of this is going to be with a focus on prototyping an experience, not trying out an API or testing out some kind of technical feasibility. So who are we? Who are we to come here and tell you how to make your apps? Well, we're a small secret team at Apple. We work across all of Apple's products. We explore what new interfaces mean to our devices, operating system, and applications. And we do this by making interactive prototypes every day, sometimes 24 hours a day. So today, you're all very lucky. I'm going to unveil to all of you today a world-changing, disruptive application. And I'd like to show it to you right now. This is an application to explore and discover artisanal toast on the streets of San Francisco. Browse for toast that's near you. Find the top toast in town. Go and get some toast. Share the toast with your friends. Take a picture. Share it with your friends and loved ones. Today, I give to you, ladies and gentlemen, Toast Modern. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And it's available now. So go and get it. Except it's not. None of this is real. It's just a prototype. So why? Why would we go to the trouble of creating this beautiful, world-changing, disruptive application that is completely fake? Well, this is the picture in most people's head. I have an idea. Then I build my application. And then, step 3, profit. Except, what I see frequently is that people have an idea, they build their application, and somehow they're disappointed by the result. Maybe the experience isn't what you've hoped for. Maybe it just doesn't resonate with your customers. And building applications are difficult. You guys know this. It takes time, takes money, people, sleep, heartache, and frankly, it's a lot of typing. So that's a lot of work for something that you're not happy with in the end. So instead of going from an idea directly to building our application, we're going to go from an idea to a prototype and then build our application. And it's best if we can do that over and over again. The more prototypes we can put between our idea and our application, the better the result is going to be. And the way that we do this is by beginning with something fake and then gradually adding elements that are more real along the way, sprinkling it with interactivity. So there are 2 important reasons to prototype I want everybody to keep in mind throughout today. Number 1 is to test ideas, to save time and money building the right things for your application. And number 2 is to get new ideas, to make the experience of your app even better in the end. So how do we do this? It's actually really simple. Make fake apps, show people, and learn from their feedback. Again, make fake apps, show people, and learn from their feedback. Do that over and over and over again until the experience of your app feels great. So how do we make fake apps? What does that mean? Well, we want to ask ourselves 3 questions before we begin. The first one is, what needs to be more real? Everything else is going to be fake, but what one element are we trying to explore and get feedback on? The second question is, what can we fake? And that's everything else. Everything else will pretty much just be a picture. The third important question is, where will they use it? We want to make sure that if we're making a prototype, it's something that we can try out on the device in the place where people will be using it. So we've made a fake app. Now it's time to show it to people. We want to ask them 3 questions as we're showing them. Do you know how to do this one particular thing that we have prototyped? Is it easy to do that thing? And in general, how can we make this better? We want to solicit kind of free-form input on how we can improve our app. You'd be surprised what interesting things people have to say. So who do we show our fake apps to? Makes sense? The people your app is for. So if your app isn't for engineers, go and find some people who are not engineers. Don't argue, defend, or dismiss. You're not there to debate the pros and cons of what you've prototyped. You're there to get information from people and learn from them. So we've showed some people. We've probably taken some notes. We've probed. We've asked a few questions. Now we ask ourselves 3 questions about what to do next. What's working in what we showed them? What's not working? What did people not understand? What did they stumble over or was confusing in some way? And what other ideas does this give us about what we might want to do next? So again, make, show, and learn. And we do this over and over again until the experience of our product is great. Now today we're going to do that in a few different ways for you guys. We're going to prototype with pictures, just drawing for the device. Then we're going to prototype with animation, so we can see how different screens that we've drawn work together. And then we're going to prototype with interaction, so we can see how the entire experience feels in our hand on the device. Now to prototype with pictures, we're actually going to do it in Keynote today. Keynote's fast, easy, and cheap, and a lot of you probably already have it on your computer. But in practice, you can use anything that can chop up pictures and draw a few.
You have seen here is the gist of what we are going to cover today. I hope you found this intro interesting. I'm going to also share the link. It's from the Apple's Worldwide Conference. He was about to jump onto how to do prototyping, where he's talking about animation, sketching, which we are also going to discuss in our video, in our lecture today. All right. All right. So yeah, so let's begin now with prototyping, what and why. I hope the video gave you an idea about why we prototype. So basically, in very simple words, prototyping is a process of developing like a working replica of any app, any product that you are going to be developing or engineering, right? So it's like a small scale replica of your end product, and you use it to obtain customer feedback. You use it so that you can show it to your customer, and then based on their feedback, you can compare what abstract requirement statements you had. And now that you have a prototype, which is like you have brought those requirements to life, and now you are asking for the customer for their feedback. And I mean, prototyping is something which is like in many different industries, it is used. For example, in civil engineering, you must have heard engineers working on a software called AutoCAD, I think it's called. And what they do is that they make a software model of the architect that they're working on. They show it to their client, who gives them feedback on what's okay and not so good. And then after that, incorporating the feedback, they start the construction. Why do we use prototypes? So the primary reason for creating a prototype, remember, is to resolve any uncertainties early in the requirement, okay? And what we are trying to do is focus on requirements that are high risk area or uncertain, so that And because you can't, it's not feasible to sort of prototype the entire requirement document that you have. So requirements that you are certain about, you can just leave them. And those which are still have some ambiguity or which have a high risk factor involved, you're going to prototype those environments and hope to learn from the prototype evaluation. So it says clarify, complete, and validate the requirement. Now, a prototype is really useful for revealing, as we said, it is useful for revealing any ambiguity or any incompleteness in the requirements. And users, managers, even your non-technical stakeholders, all of them can be part of the this prototype evaluation, where they can see something concrete and they can contemplate whether the product that is going to be built later on is designed the way they had asked for. So prototypes assist in obtaining agreement, in finding errors and omissions, and assessing the accuracy and quality of requirements. Prototype evaluations reveals problems with the requirements and uncovers overlooked requirements, which can be corrected at a lower cost. So if I say that they help us to validate the requirements, so remember in our last week's lecture, when we were talking about validation, verification, and testing of requirements, we said that validation is all about building the right product. And prototype is a really valuable tool for requirements validation, right? So, you know, like in your role as a business analyst, you can make your users interact with the prototype to see if the product that is in the making is truly meeting their needs. So now the next point is explore design alternatives. It's used as a design tool. A prototype enables the stakeholders to explore different user interaction techniques, envision the final product, and optimize system usability. So, you know, something that is in a visual form is presented to the customer to resolve any uncertainties. Prototypes can demonstrate requirements feasibility through working designs, and it is useful for confirming the developer's understanding of the requirements before constructing the actual solution. So, you know, it can be as simple as you can just make a simple sketch of a user interface screen, or you can come up with a mock-up, and depending on what you are doing, where you are in your design process, and then what questions you're trying to answer, you show your client different, like the sketch that you have built, and you ask them for design alternatives. I'm thinking of right now of this example where an Adelaide smart city initiative was launched, I think a couple of years back, and it was it's like a joint collaboration of your local government, of tech companies, and you know, the community, the citizens are involved as well, and even researchers are involved. Your University of Adelaide was a partner in that as well. So what they did was, now smart city is such an abstract concept, right? And they tried to, obviously they did a lot of work in asking the community as well as the citizens, and all these like stakeholders were involved to give their definition of smart city. And then they ended up working on two, I think there were two small trials that they did. And that was like a smart light trial and a parking app, smart parking app. So what they did, they held an exhibition in the city where they sort of came up with a prototype of what this app would look like, or what the smart light trial is going to be like, just so that all these stakeholders, including your general public, can come and have a look and give their feedback on what they think is good about it, and where they can find improvements. So just imagine that when you have all these stakeholders involved, looking at something tangible in front of them of what the upcoming smart city is going to look like at least two ideas of it, the smart parking as well as the smart lighting. So that gives an opportunity, it opens a window of opportunity to a lot of ideas, maybe on design, on envisioning how the final product should be looking like and how to optimize it. Next is it creates a subset that will grow into the ultimate product. So watching people interact with that prototype model of the smart city helped the tech companies, the researchers, and like understand a lot of questions as to how the ultimate product is going to shape. So to say that a prototype is a subset which ultimately leads to which grows into the final product is a really good way to describe it. It's best in like if your prototype evaluators, they can, they approach the product as a new user might be. So for example, when that exhibition was held in the city about this Adelaide smart city, so even like they opened it to the general public, and obviously there were many tech companies and many researchers coming as well and having a look at it. So gaining a feedback from a multitude of stakeholders and getting to like gaining from someone who is an expert in this field to someone who is a completely new user. So that can help you generate a lot of feedback, which can help you grow your product even better. So yeah, they are quite prototypes as it is. They give you that answer that whether your product is usable or not. It's where it's lacking and what are the unnecessary things in it. So, and from there you can work on making your product. All right. Now we are going to discuss mockups and proof of concept. Mockup is like a type of prototype. And when we talk about mockup, the agile approach to software engineering comes into mind, because mockups are a really handy tool of in agile approach to software methodology. So the agile approaches, they often rely on the user interface mockup. So it says here that they are interface focused. They mainly focus on the user interface. It doesn't go into the architectural layers or into a detailed functionality, right? So it explores some specific behavior of the intended system. So for example, you can show to your client what your homepage is going to be like, what the contact us page, like if you're making a website for your client, so how these pages are going to look like, just so to give them an idea of how they can interact as a user, how they can interact with the web page. And there is nothing more to it. It doesn't go into defining the functionality behind them. Mockups, so they also show behavior. So basically they show a behavior without implementation. So when you are developing a mockup prototype, you do not have to go to the implementation details or the architecture of it. So basically you're not going to go into the details of functional and non-functional behavior of the requirements. You are only going to give an opportunity to the user as to how they're going to interact with it, right? It basically, you are just showing them through like a screen, or providing them with a facade with which they can interact. So like a user interface screen and how they can navigate between them, but it contains little or no functionality. So remember, that's like the key defining point of a mockup, that it's mainly focused on user interface, and it shows the behavior without implementation details, and it demonstrates functional options. So a mockup can tell you a lot about like the look and the feel of the user interface, and it's how the navigation is going to take place. So the navigation structure. So for example, it can, like through a mockup, you can show the layout of your web page, what the color is going to be like, what the displays are, and the output is going to be like, but it's not, and it's all going to be simulated. You cannot display any non-functional ability of the software. So for example, you cannot show the client that how much time a page is going to take to respond, or how secure the web page is, or how scalable the system is. It's mainly focused on the layout, on the graphics, on the controls. So like it says here, that look and feel of the user interface and navigation structure. And a user may only see a message that describes what would really be displayed, or will find that some controls don't work. So because we are not going into detailed functionality of the website, we are just giving them a simulated version of what messages can appear, right? Nothing, it's quite shallow, it's not deep in nature. Mockup doesn't perform a useful task, but gives an impression of performing a useful task. So you will find that even like in big companies, like in Google and in Apple, they use a lot of sketching and a lot of paper rapid prototyping. It's called paper prototyping, where they just draw on with a pencil and paper, and they just give, and that drawing is just telling, for example, the first page is just going to show the web page, and with a button, order a product. And then on the next paper, they may just, like show what is going to be displayed when the customer clicks on order a product. So it isn't performing a useful task, but it's just giving an impression of what a task is going to be like. Just giving an impression to the client what is going to happen when the system, when that order now button is going to be displayed. Okay, so I hope you get an idea of what mockup is, because proof of concept is completely opposite of a mockup. Proof of concept, unlike a mockup, goes into the implementation details. As it says here, it implements a part of an application. So what you can do is, if you have written a use case, you can implement a use case, a single use case. So it just shows like a portion or a slice of an application. We are not talking about the entire application itself. So you can just implement a use case, show it to your potential client if it works or not. All right. For example, if you have written a unit code, you can demonstrate it to your client if it's executable or not. So again, as I said, proof of concept is just focusing on one a part of an application, and it's just showing, it is not going to show the non-functional side of the software. So we can focus on like one or two features. We can work on implementing it, rolling them out, and see how they work. But remember that in proof of concept, that although you can demonstrate the functional requirements, the non-functional requirements will be difficult. Why? Because for the non-functional requirements, like if you are using proof of concept prototype, then you may be using a simulated server, like just one server, which will have a limited capacity. So it will be difficult to show them how how much time does the page take to upload and all that stuff. So that's why you cannot actually show them the response time of the system, or how good the system is scalable. So just focusing on the functional side of it. Okay, so mockups and proof of concept. We now move on to another type, which is called throwaway prototyping. Now, throwaway prototyping, as the name suggests, is that you are going to discard this prototype after it has served its purpose. So throwaway prototyping helps answer questions mainly. Now, why are we making it? It helps answer questions, it resolves uncertainties, and it improves the requirements quality. So it has that intrinsic feature of why we do prototyping, right? But it is built quickly and cheaply without solid software construction techniques. So you don't invest too many resources in it. You don't invest a lot of time in it. You are not allowed, you're not supposed to follow any standard design principles in it. Okay, a throwaway prototype doesn't, it ignores any solid software construction techniques. It just emphasizes on quick implementation and that's it. So we are not going to, as you will see, there is another prototype called evolutionary prototype, which is a lot about, reliability and maintenance and robustness. But your throwaway prototype is one that is just built. It is, it is low quality. The code is written quickly and without utilizing any resources in it. So it says here that prototype code must not be migrated to the production system. So the author in your book, he keeps on emphasizing to let your client know that when you are doing like a throwaway prototype, explain to your client that it is just a throwaway prototype. You are not going to take it forward. You are not going to elaborate it further. So your book talks a lot about that it will be really hard to resist the temptation or the pressure from the users to not to use a throwaway prototype, because it can look quite, an easy prototype to understand. But the author firmly mentions in the book that just don't take it forward. It is not supposed to be part of your final product. So don't keep on adding more capabilities to this prototype. Okay, just build it quickly and cheaply and get done with it. Helps in situations of uncertainties, ambiguities, incompleteness, or vagueness in requirements. So it basically helps in giving, obviously it is fulfilling our main objective of what a prototype should be doing, which is resolving uncertainties. So it gives a visual model to the client, and it helps the client reflect. It helps them answer some ambiguities that they may have, but remember, we cannot take it forward. Okay, it is supposed to be discarded after a demonstration, and obviously after taking the feedback from the client. Okay, now we talk about wireframes. This term is quite synonymous with the making of the website. So basically it's a user interface design and a website design. So it's basically like a visual representation of the layout of your website. Okay, you can show it to your client that this is how the homepage is going to look like. This is how I've designed the buttons. Whether, like, you can ask them whether they want it circular, rectangular. So wireframe is, I think, a terminology that is quite synonymous with people who are into user experience design, who are user experience designers. And yeah, it basically clarifies and defines all the website features. So what it does is, when communicating these ideas to your client, they may not have, like, website designers may have this technical language, lexicon that they use, for example, like a hero image, like which is a front page banner, I think it's called, or call to action. So your client may not be aware of these technical techniques, but through wireframing, you can show your clients these specific features. You can clearly communicate to them through a user interface, and tell your client that, like, how they will function and what purpose they are going to serve. Okay, so again, the wireframe is again focused on the user interface design. All right. And yeah, just informing your client about the navigation design and about how the conceptual requirements, like where you will place the different buttons, how the general output, the look of the web page is going to look like. All right. So we move on. We have discussed mockups, proof of concept, throwaway, and wireframe. Okay, now we talk about something, a prototype which is like has quite a solid foundation. Okay, we have been talking about kind of prototypes like the throwaway, which is nothing more than, like you built it quickly and you don't make it part of your final product. We talked about mockups, which are mainly focused on user interface. We've talked about proof of concept, which does demonstrate a technical feasibility. It does incorporate that, but it is nothing more than showing like one or two use cases. So, and then we talked about your wireframes. Evolutionary prototype, now in contrast to a throwaway prototype, an evolutionary prototype provides a solid foundation for building the product incrementally as the requirements become clear over time. Okay, remember in throwaway prototype, we said we are going to throw this prototype out. We are not going to build on top of it. It is not the basis for the software, but the evolutionary prototype, as the name shows, it evolves based on what you have already developed. You are going to retain it. You are going to work on it incrementally. It is going to help you build the product over time. Okay. So, yeah, so agile development is an example of evolutionary prototype. So, like in the agile, the teams that are working for in the agile methodology, they construct the product through a series of iterations. They use a lot of feedback on the early iterations to adjust the direction of the future development of the product. Okay, and this is basically if you ask me, the essence of evolutionary prototyping. Working on the product through iterations, through collecting feedback, improving it. So, for example, you are working in iterations. So first, maybe you have developed like 10% of your product, and then you get back to your client, seek feedback on it. Another iteration, you build on top of it, and now you have delivered 15% or a 20%, and so on. All right. So, a very, if I tell you a major difference between evolutionary and throwaway prototype is that your evolutionary prototype follows standard design principles. Okay, you have to, like if you are following an object-oriented approach for the entire product, you have to follow the same for your prototype. You will follow those principles that you will basically follow for the whole product. Okay, so evolutionary prototype is going to simulate the same system capabilities. Okay, so yeah, that's how you can see like how it's a level above your the previous prototypes that we have discussed so far. So it incorporates robust production quality code. So the code that you write for evolutionary prototyping has to be of high quality. It follows like all the principles for a high quality software coding. So for example, like a good code we know has to have modularity in it, where you are separating the functionality of the program into independent modules. Or there has to be granularity, or we say that you have to write comments with each code. So you're going to follow all that. while making your evolutionary prototype. And then it says it's designed for easy growth and frequent enhancement, use of software architecture and solid design principles. So you, like in a throwaway prototype, you're not really concerned about extending it or modifying it, but your evolutionary prototype, you should write the code in a way that it is extendable, it can be enhanced, and it can be modified. Okay, so it is reflecting software architecture principles. The first iteration can be an evolutionary prototype as a pilot release that implements in initial portions of requirements. So the first iteration can be an evolutionary prototype. So here, for example, you all know about like Google Scholar, right? Now, Google also released something called Google Scholar data sets. I wonder if you have ever like utilized them. I think it is, they released it back in 2019. So what happens is, now, when I just mentioned Google, so you would be, that would have told you that yes, Google uses evolutionary prototyping. And even you must have seen like when companies come up with a new release of a product, they usually use this alpha version or the beta version of the product, right? So when Google released this Scholar data sets in 2019, they called it like the beta version. So initially, like it was labeled, it was released as a beta version. So that meant that, look, we are still working on it. We are continuously developing it using the evolutionary prototyping. And this is just an initial version of it. And we are going to build on top of it. Okay, so EP, the evolutionary prototyping, can also be used as the first, in the first iteration and the first release of your product. Okay, I hope I was clear enough in that. Oh, sorry, I go back. Okay, now it says users, right, users can have a functional system in, users can have functional system in iterations. So basically, when a prototyping that is so solid, based on such solid design principles, what you are doing is, you, in each iteration, you are fulfilling a requirement, you are delivering a functionality. So for example, like if you're making an online library system, so in each, maybe in one iteration you talk about borrowing a book, and then you move on in about borrowing notes or things like that. So it's very focused on delivering functionality in each iteration. And yeah, this type of prototyping is more suitable for web development. Web development, well, you know that web applications, they vary so much in terms of their functionality, right? So that's why like evolutionary prototyping is quite suitable for web applications, because of all the reasons that we have, we have discussed here. Because of its like it's robust, it's easy to grow, it's easy to modify, enhance, it's built on solid principles, it can cater to satisfying functional requirements. Okay, all right. Here we are with a matrix. Now basically here you're seeing the different combinations of prototypes. This is like you have mock-ups and proof of concept on one side, and throwaway and evolutionary. So mock-up and proof of concept is based on whether you are like implementing a use case or not, while your throwaway and evolutionary is based on like whether you are going to contain the prototype or you're going to throw it away. Okay, So, and you can come up with different combinations. So if you look under evolutionary prototype, and if it's a mock-up, then you can see that it says you need to have a robust algorithm and quality code from the very outset. Okay, so it's just like it's showing a different combination of, showing you combinations of different prototypes. I hope I'm being okay with the lecture. Okay. All right. Now we have, yeah, this is just like, this figure is showing how prototyping can be incorporated in your software development lifecycle. Okay. So obviously you'd all start from, the first step is you elicit your user requirements. Then you take like 3 different parts. You can develop like a throwaway mockup, which means that, you know, you're just developing like the functional side of it and you're going to throw it away and not build on top of it. The other option is that you're going to develop your architecture, and from that, in other words, you're going to refine your requirements, and from that you are going to construct your evolutionary prototype. While the third option is the proof of concept. Like there will be implementation involved in it, but it is not, remember, it is not evolutionary in that sense. So, and then, you know, how you can take it, all of these 3 different parts, how they arrive at the final stage of delivering the product. I think one of the courses that are coming ahead for you in your degree is the software design workshop, where you will have like the opportunity to develop these prototypes, and you know, of the requirements that you have gathered in the course. So for example, if you would still be working on the projects that you have had in this course, so for now, in this course, you have worked on elicitation, you have developed your use cases, and you know, your final product was developing an SRS. But in the next, like the software design workshop 2, you're going to take on from the prototyping. So you're going to be working with any of these prototypes based on your requirements. And then you're going to work throughout like a full-scale implementation of the system. So that's what this figure is all about. Okay, so like, yeah, the entire software developmental life cycle, how prototyping is involved in the entire software life cycle. All right. Paper and electronic prototypes. Now, again, here, I want to show you a video. So you just bear with me. We are going to talk about rapid prototyping, which is the paper prototyping. And Peter, if you can just confirm, you can look at the screen. Okay, good. I'm going to play.
What is a prototype? The way I think about it, a prototype is an experimental model of an idea. It's a way to give our ideas a presence that we can put in front of somebody else to see if our idea has value. As a design researcher here at Google, I put ideas in front of people who use our products all the time. Is your idea ready to be put in front of people? Yes. Yes. In fact, in this video series, we'll share with you several types of prototyping methods that you can use to get your ideas in front of people as soon as possible. Now, how will you know when it's right to show your idea to someone else? The fidelity of your prototype should match the fidelity of your thinking. So don't be afraid to share your prototypes early and often to get feedback to guide your next product design decision. So we put together a series of 3 videos to introduce you to various techniques we use at Google. There's sketching and paper prototyping, digital prototyping with form and principle, and native prototyping. So to get things started, let's take a look at how teams at Google take an idea in their head and make the first stroke of the pen on paper.
Hi, my name is Melissa Powell, and I'm on Google's Developer Relations team. I get to work with designers, developers, and entrepreneurs both inside and outside of Google to solve some pretty tough design challenges.
And I'm Miriam Sheikh, a senior user experience designer at Google. I design ad experiences to make them better and simpler to use for products such as Google Search, AdWords, and DoubleClick. And we're here to talk to you about sketching and paper prototyping. I often work in digital prototyping and graphic design tools to create high-fidelity mocks like these. But even at a high-tech company like Google, we generally start the design process with something that looks a lot more like this. By the end of the video, you should feel confident knowing when to use sketching and paper prototyping, 4 types of sketches we commonly use at Google, and 3 primary benefits of paper prototyping. Sketching is a fundamental part of the design process and can help you make key decisions about what to design. It can be as simple as drawing on a piece of paper or even a Post-it note. Or you can use any of these common materials to create a more realistic sketch and share your sketch with others. Sketching can be used in nearly any stage in the product design process. You can use different types of sketches depending on who you're working with and what you need to communicate. Sketching is great when thinking through all of the initial ideas running through your head. You can sketch to outline the steps in a user flow, explore a variety of layouts, and to show the basic app structure, or what we commonly call a wireframe. Once you've agreed on the rough layout, we usually create higher fidelity sketches with details such as buttons, images, and color. At this point, you may decide to transfer your sketches to your digital tools, but the more you can flesh out your ideas on paper, the faster you'll move on your computer. During mid-development and even post-launch, you may need to rethink your design and want to quickly visualize new ideas. So you might bust out a pen and paper even if you already have high-fidelity digital prototypes. It can be faster to communicate and validate your new ideas through sketches before you have to make those changes to your digital prototype.
In addition to sketching, another low-fidelity option is paper prototyping. Today I'll cover how paper prototyping can help you think through key user interactions, use color more purposefully, and visualize elevation and shadows. And let me give you some practical paper prototyping pro tips. As you can see with the sketch that Miriam created, it's easy to visualize the user flow, but it's a little bit more difficult to understand the user interactions between the screens. You can use your paper prototype to simulate interactions. For example, if we look over here, I've pre-created some paper prototypes, and we can explore what happens when I click on an individual button. Here we have the floating action button or the quantity, and we can actually have it drop down. And see what happens when a new screen appears and we're looking at the checkout cart. We can also select the address and a pop-up window will appear. To avoid carrying around your paper prototype from meeting to meeting, record these interactions with your phone. Or you can create an animated GIF by taking a few stills and throwing it into Google Photos' Auto Awesome feature. It's just easier to share your ideas with people that way. Another pro tip is to print out existing screens. Instead of redrawing all the common elements over and over, the goal here isn't to test your arts and crafts skills, but to explore the interactions and natural transitions between the screens. And since we're working with paper, you can also explore different principles of material design, such as color, elevation, and shadows. Material design is Google's visual design language that synthesizes classic principles of good design with the innovation and possibility of technology. And at the end of the day, it was inspired by the study of paper and ink. So why not get back to basics using paper and ink? A good place to start is to think through purposeful and consistent use of colors. The material design spec has a lot of great information about selecting hues and saturations, so be sure to explore the full material design color palette at the link in the description below. And be purposeful with your use of color, not just on one screen, but throughout the app. In general, we recommend choosing one primary color, which is most commonly used for components such as the app bar or background, and one or perhaps two accent colors for anything that you want to grab the user's attention, such as the fab, or to indicate that a tab has been selected. Paper prototyping can help you think through your purposeful use of color because as a practical paper prototyping pro, you'll want to reuse the colors throughout the app. Not only is that easier, but when this translates to your final product, it will reduce visual noise for the user, making navigation much easier. And because we're working with physical materials, be sure to make note of how the layers form shadows. Of course, we have the x-axis and the y-axis. With material design, we're encouraged to consider and make use of the z-axis, an elevation of each sheet. You can read more about elevation and shadows in the material design spec, linked in the description below.
As you saw, you can use different types of sketching throughout the product design cycle to help you visualize and communicate your ideas in a lightweight fashion with user flows, rapid sketches of many layout options, wireframes, and detailed sketches with images and text.
And paper prototyping is one technique that can help you think through key user interactions and explore material design principles such as purposeful use of color, elevation, and shadows.
Now that you've visualized your ideas on paper, you can shop them around with your teammates or users to validate your assumptions and make smarter design decisions. You can translate your sketches into higher fidelity digital mocks to build a robust prototype. To learn about making a digital prototype, check.
Okay. So this one was just focused on paper prototyping. All right, let me get back to my lecture screen. So did you get a gist of what paper sketching, paper prototyping is like? Yeah, I think it really helped in understanding. So we were It does, and actually they have this entire series on digital prototyping as well, and I think it's a really good idea. After the class, I'll share some links on Slack so that you guys can have a detailed look. Okay, just so because it also gives you a feel that it's not something like, I mean, all these big companies like Apple and Google, they all incorporate these techniques in their products. Okay, so we were, I believe, yeah, this is what we were going to discuss. Now, just because of the video that you have just seen, it's as simple as getting hold of a paper prototyping is just a simple way of getting a paper and a pencil and sketch what the system is going to look like. So it's a quick and inexpensive way of exploring how a system might look. And you don't need any, a lot of time and resources in it. And then it says, identify a shared understanding of requirements. You can put these sketches in front of the client to help you agree on the requirements. And then it says, low fidelity prototype to explore the functionality and flow, and high fidelity prototypes for the look and the feel. So paper prototype, it covers both. And then it says a combination of low fidelity prototype and spoken out actions that a computer would perform. So you saw how in the video with paper sketching, you can actually show the interaction of the user with the prototype, right? Where she's showing the order now button, or how, sorry, the checkout, and how she drew the sketch on the next paper. Okay, so the first sketch can show the button, and when you click on it, the second sketch can actually show you what will appear. Okay, and then it says for a simple throwaway prototype, you can use Visio, PowerPoint, or any commercial tool. I'm sure you're familiar with all this. So he's saying that instead of just using the paper, you can also make use of these softwares and focus the prototype on refining the requirements rather than on visual designs. So remember that when you put the sketches in front of your client, while the client may only be interested in, like looking at the color of the button and suggesting, oh, I need a change of this color, or maybe I want the position of the button moved here, or make it circular and not rectangular, but make sure that you elicit some conceptual requirements. All right, for example, like if you have, for example, like you're working on a project of the student mental health. So try, when you're going to show it to your client, try to find requirements related to the use case and not just the user interface. Try to elicit conceptual requirements from the user when you are showing the prototype. Okay, and yeah. So something that's quite easy can easily be done. You can anytime take out a paper and pencil and use this paper prototype to explore with your client how your system is going to look like. Okay. This visual is like an activity sequence from use cases to user interface design using a throwaway prototype. Now, even in your projects till now, and even in this last task that you submitted as a group project, you have identified around 8 to 10 use cases for your project, right? And that is your the starting point. And then you come up with, you come up with a dialogue map. Dialogue map is like your pages of application and how they're going to, this is what it looks like, how they're going to interact with each other. So let me just show you. This one is just saying that you start with the use cases and you make a dialogue map where you are just showing how the different pages are going to interact with each other. Then you're going to make a throwaway prototype, which will then lead to a detailed user interface design. And obviously, when you have a prototype or a feedback, or a dialogue map, or there's a lot of feedback from the user, just so that you can reduce any any risk of errors or where the requirements need to change significantly. Okay. Why isn't this moving? This is what the dialogue map looks like. Here you can see there are different pages, like a home page, blog, submit a blog, information about the author. So I think it's mainly about they are building a website for for an author. And the projects that you are working on in your course, you can visualize what, now that you have the use cases, you can make a dialogue map based on those use cases. Okay, you can visualize what can be the pages in my application based on my use cases. And then the next step can be, you can see the relationship between them and how these pages are interacting with each other. Okay, so for example, here you can see from home page, you can pretty much access all other pages like the blog or register for mailing list and so on. All right, so this is what a dialogue map looks like. Okay, evaluation. Evaluation is, where you are you're doing prototyping for the people because you want them to work with it, and then you want to know their thoughts. So prototype evaluation, we are going to discuss some of the questions that you can ask your user, or the people who are testing your prototype. So it says here that prototype evaluation is very much like your usability testing. You're watching people working with the prototype rather than asking their thoughts. Okay. So I think we have talked about, in our last lecture, we have talked about validating our requirements, right? And in that we talked about inspection. So there we are saying that once I have an SRS document built, I want that document to be inspected by my teammates to look for any defects. So there's an inspection team that is set up, and there's an entire inspection process that goes on in, in validating that document. The same thing we are doing with prototype. Once you have built a prototype, you want to see how good or bad it is. So you develop a prototype, you give it to the user, and then you observe how they are interacting with it. Are they confused while using it? Does the prototype crash at any point while you're using it? And is there any user flow that has not been considered? Okay, so for example, this mental health app that if you're working, have chosen that as your project for the course. If you are working about that, you may have, if you build a prototype, you are going to have users like the students, faculty members, who you can bring together and give them the prototype, ask them to interact with it, and then observe them and see if they are struggling with it, what is it that they don't like using about it, what is not working well for them. All right. So this is what we do in prototype evaluation. So having the right people from all the user classes, okay, that's really important, that whoever is there to test your prototype, they are the right representatives of your user classes. Does the prototype implement the functionality in the expected way? What functionality is missing from the prototype? Now, can you think of any possible error conditions that a prototype doesn't address? And remember, when you're talking about, when you are taking this feedback from them and you are watching them, either something that they like or something they may, something that puts a frown on their face, don't get judgmental about the users, okay? You need to be open-hearted, you need to listen to their feedback, because the important thing is that you are trying to solicit as much feedback from your user as possible, okay? So, so is the prototyping implementing the functionality? Like if you can take it, the example can be that if I click on order the product, when I enter the details of my card, and if the card details are wrong, like if normally a credit card has 12 digits, and if I just enter 4 or 5, does the system say that it is not correct? So look for these kind of conceptual functionalities of your system, okay? You need to keep an eye on them. What functionality is missing from the system? Now in your mental health app for your project, you may find that you have missed an important user from that app, maybe the administrator of the app. So maybe your users say that, like there's some functionality that is missing. So that will give you an idea that, yeah, I need to have a functionality for the administrator here. So, evaluation also tells you what's missing from the evaluation of a prototype, also tells you what's missing. So can you think of any possible error conditions that the prototype doesn't address? So, and what you can do is try to input, tell the user to play with your application, try to input different things in it, and try to see if it fails. And because once if it fails, that is going to give you show you a gap that the developer can work on. Are there any unnecessary functions present? So just like we talked about, if there is any functionality missing, we also look for any unnecessary functions in your app. All right, maybe the user is not using a functionality and it's there, and that if it's not being used, that can tell you that this functionality, whether it needs to be there or not. Okay. Yeah, how logical and complete does the navigation seem? Is the navigation easy, for the user? And were you ever unsure of what to do next? So this is something really interesting, because, for example, in your user classes, you may be having users that are completely novice they are novice users. They are novice to the idea of using an app. And then on the other end, you will have users who are quite, who have a lot of experience of using an app. So listening to the experience of each user, of what their experience was of using the prototype app, is another way of evaluating your prototype. So for example, when the library where I live in my suburbs, they updated their app, and then to make it easy for the old age people who are coming to the library and access it, they distributed some, leaflets before of what each sign means and what is the flow of the app going to be like. So I think that was also, and they also even before launching the app, they had this survey which they took from all the library users as to what changes you want to see in the app, and that provided them the basis of coming up with the new application. So just trying to tell you that, remember, every user is quite valuable. They all, even if they are novice users, they bring their novelty of using that application with them. So while you are trying to evaluate, try to make sure that you have a balanced representation of all kinds of users working with your prototype. Okay. So this is what, so the prototype evaluation is all based on watching people work with the prototype and asking them questions as well. What is it that they liked about it and what were they unsure of? There are risks of prototyping involved as well. And I think the first, let me just start reading the first point. It says stakeholders perceive a prototype as a complete system. Now, that's something quite common. That's something that you should be prepared for, that your user may think, if they like the prototype, they may be ready to take it as it is, But you as a business analyst have to make sure that you do not give that feeling to the client that this prototype is a complete system, because it is not. Okay, if you just show up a mock-up, like if you're using a mock-up as a prototype, and if you're showing a mock-up to your client, they may be very happy to see a user interface, right? Because it is focused a lot on user interface. But remember that the code that is written is not of a very high quality that it can be released. So the stakeholder may say, release it. It looks really fine to me. User interface is quite easy to use. And he may say, oh, because we can save time and money by releasing it quickly. But you know that it is not the case. The code behind it is not developed yet for the purpose of deployment or release. Okay. And in your book, it mentions that one way that you can take this pressure off is by using paper prototypes rather than digital prototypes, or like a PowerPoint mockup. Okay. So that's one of the risks, pressure to release a prototype. So maybe your stakeholder forces you to deliver a system whose design and code do not incorporate quality as yet. So you have to save yourself off this pressure. Now, the second one is distraction by details. Another risk of prototyping is users may get fixated on details rather than focusing on conceptual issues, right? And so, they may get fixated about how the interface is going to look like. Oh, what font we are using, what color, where, and all that stuff. But when working with, and this is, I think, a risk of prototyping, that when working with real looking prototypes, it's easy for users to forget that they should actually be concerned with the conceptual issues at this stage, and they can, leave all the details like the display or the navigation later on. So try to focus on That's why they say try to focus or target your uncertain requirements for the prototypes, okay? Because you want the users to come up with their ideas, with their conceptual ideas for any uncertain requirement. So don't prototype well understood requirements, okay? Always go for that are high risk or that are uncertain. Next is unrealistic performance expectations. Now, prototypes performance may be taken as an indication of the performance of the final product. Okay, informing users that the prototype is not the true representation of the final system. Now, it is possible when your prototype evaluators or your clients, when they see a prototype and they see that it is responding like instantaneously to a simulated query, they might expect, like the page is downloading quite quickly, they might expect the same performance in the final software. And remember that your final product is going to have like an enormous database behind it. So perhaps here you can, you might put a message on the screen to clearly state that this is not necessarily the representative of the final system, and or you can, like consider putting in some time delays, just so that you are more realistically simulating the behavior of the final product. Okay. Yeah, because that's a risk that I think that can enter any app or product that you're working on. We need to make that prototype like look less ready for immediate delivery. Like that's the point that I'm trying to convey here. So just focus on that as well. And then, which leads to this last point, which is investing excessive effort in a prototype. Okay, so this can happen when you're prototyping like the entire solution, rather than when only the most complex portions of your system, or the uncertain or the high risk parts of your system. So what they're trying to say here is prototyping may consume a lot of resources, and then there are not sufficient resources left for the project. So if you're investing too much of time in just building a prototype, you might lag behind in the final delivery of your project. Prototyping is an experiment. Enough prototyping should allow testing the hypotheses about different aspects of the requirements. That's it. That's where you should stop. Don't make don't make your prototype look too polished. Okay. Because if you bring something which is like almost like a completed product, your clients are not going to hesitate to just take it as it is. All right. And what can happen is that, they can like get distracted by a very finely designed user interface, and you may end up missing some of the more important functional issues behind that prototype. So yeah. You can always, fine-tuning can always come later, okay? So these are the risks involved, and I think we have now sort of come to the end. Yeah. Prototyping success factors. How can you make your prototype, the time and effort that you are, giving in your prototype, to be successful? Okay, to make prototyping an effective part of your requirement process, you follow these steps. You make prototype a part of your project plan. You allocate time, resources, you put it in your schedule. Okay, if you have less time, then maybe you can decide to go for a paper prototype, and you have seen the video for that, where you go and work with sketches, and state the purpose of each prototype up front. What will happen to the prototype? Discard or archive? So tell the client straight away whether you're going whether this prototype is a throwaway or it's an evolutionary prototype. Okay. And then it says, create throwaway prototypes quickly and cheaply, not perfecting it. And see, so this is also one of the risks that we define. So in order to be, one of the success factors is that you have to, especially a throwaway prototype has to be done away quickly. Make it quick, make it cheap. And because you know it's a low quality, it has no architectural styles involved in it, no functionality is involved in it. So yeah, just get it done quickly. Sorry. The next is no input data validations, defensive coding techniques, error handling, no unnecessary investment of resources. So they speak particularly for the throwaway prototype. You don't need to follow any design principles for it. And yeah, the next is understood prototypes shouldn't be understood requirements shouldn't be prototyped. So don't waste your time on requirements that are, quite clear, but invest your time in those that are still have ambiguity in it. Use plausible data in prototype screen displays and reports. Evaluators can be distracted by unrealistic data and fail to focus on prototype. Okay, so this is like you try to check with multiple types of data in your prototype, okay? Prototype shouldn't replace a written document. A lot of behind the scenes functionality is only implied by the prototype and should be documented in an SRS to make it complete, specific, and traceable. So I think this last factor actually tells you that there is no shortcut involved in validating your requirements. Prototype is not a shortcut to validating your requirements, okay? It is just a visual representation of your SRS document. Prototype itself is not like a requirement document. They both are irreplaceable. They both hold their, their positions at their place. They both are important. So don't replace prototype with written documentation or the other way. Okay. So this brings us to the end. I think this one, the first video, is that Google paper sketching rapid prototyping one. I just wanted to briefly tell you about, I think I didn't mention it, or maybe I can do that on Slack. There are like two platforms that you can use for digital prototyping. One is this one is called Envision app. So basically, I'll just yeah, they are free, and you can just, when you go, it's very easy to sort of do like a visual representation of your products. You can make a page, you can connect it with another page, and you can even put that link straight to your document that you're working on. So I'm going to put those two. They are basically your tools for digital prototyping, and they are free. And I just thought I can mention it then that to you. I didn't write it here in the slide. That's fine. So I believe that brings us to the end of this workshop. Thank